What was the first written word ever, even predating the Sumerians? Also, why do so many cultures, in fact all of them, have some sort of flood reference? We're going to be tying this into the ancient world amongst fascinating mysteries, also the marine kingdom. Something did happen at the time of the flood. Obviously there was a lot of fallen angel incursion and a lot of titans, giants, and other beings that had to be destroyed at the time of the flood. We're going to be diving into all that, and we'll be ending this with the marine kingdom exploration. Is the abyss, Tartarus, the underworld, and places like that actually physically on Earth inside of the ocean? 12 gates to the underworld possibly. We'll be exploring all this. See you in a little bit. The mysterious marine kingdom, possible Nephilim survivors, the oldest written word even predating the Sumerians, Noah's Ark landing site possibly, evidence coming up, as well as the mysterious seat of the gods in the sea. And what exactly did it mean when God said he won't strive with man forever? Let's check it out. According to the book of Jasher, there was 2 floods, one that killed 1/3 of the world, and then the flood. Lots of other cultures have flood accounts very similar to the Bible, from Sumerian, Greek, Hindus, Egyptian, etc. An entire worldwide wipeout flood. We know the reason for the flood was the Nephilim incursion. The idea is God was actually saving the world, not destroying it. This worldwide flood appears to be documented in one of the oldest megalithic sites known as Gobekli Tepe, which to me seems like Noah's Ark landing site. The oldest writing that predates the Sumerians, the first word is actually God, and it's aligned towards the Aquarius constellation, which we'll come back to later. These 10-tone stone pillars document a worldwide flood and a new civilization given a second chance, and another warning for an end. It also documents lots of animals from all over the world that would never be in one place, except for supernatural reasons like the gathering for the flood. Quick side note about dating. I don't dismiss it, but can it be trusted? Because it can be manipulated. Also, I hate the idea that the first is right. Just look at the news today. It's really only first discovered. Who's to say what's not been discovered, or what's been discovered and suppressed? You really have to use your spiritual senses, the ones that they try to not let you have. So yeah, you can always trust the people with the most money and power to always just tell you the most truth, for sure. With that chase the always changing fact, faith, carrot on a stick tactic. Anyway, all these animal monuments and things I mentioned are located right near Ararat, the mountain in Turkey where it said that Noah's Ark landed. It seems like from the Ark landing in Mount Ararat, they simply came down the mountain and started civilization there and made all these monuments to document everything. And civilization spread out from there, which is what the evidence seems to indicate. Quick notes on the pillars. Pillar 43 talks about waves and a flood. Pillar 56 talks about waves, crashing, and animals and fleeing. Pillar 18 is the only word in the whole site, and it's God. And it's aligned towards Aquarius, which is really interesting because in the Gospels, Jesus talks about the constellation Aquarius. And the disciples ask him, "Where must we go to follow you?" When he said, "Follow the man with the pitcher into the house." Esoteric meaning of the house, as in the constellation Aquarius, the man with the pitcher. Cultural context note, in those times a man would never be carrying a pitcher. It appears to be a cryptic statement that in order to follow him, you have to actually follow him into the next age, where you will rule and reign with him. Also, aside from the word God being aligned to Aquarius, most of the monuments talking about the flood are aligned to Cygnus, the swan. Or is the true identity of Cygnus actually the white dove? The one that the Bible tells you about that was sent out from the ark. Cygnus is actually the white dove in the Mazzaroth, also representing the Holy Spirit. Anyway, when you follow things like big archaeology, you may think things like pyramids or tombs, even though no mummies have ever been found in them, ever. Or that Romans built the first roads, when actually the Mayans have advanced networks of highways. And that's only been what's been discovered so far, or admitted. And again, it's always going to change. Anyway, wrapping up before we move into the marine kingdom fascinating things, it also shows fire from the sky, just like the pattern from Sodom and Gomorrah, which is raining sulfur down, and if you really pay attention, you'll see that that reset devastation pattern results in instant petrification. Just look what happened to Lot's wife. Now think about all the giants and the whole petrified giants are mountains and all those other theories. Lots of giants, titans, and other things instantly turning into land masses. By the way, what do you think Himalayan pink salt, possibly shilajit are? Maybe even some gemstones. Last quick note on fossils, that's not exactly how it happens the way you've been told, because pickles have been found fossilized in a jar from not that long ago. Plus, it seems like there was an instant of flash frozen fossilization because things like fish have been fossilized eating another fish. Plus, fossils have been found in the act of eating and other things that indicate an instant fossilization type of event. And also explains weird dating. Any kind of atmospheric differences or devastation or cataclysmic event would result in weird dating. Also, it appears a lot of the site has been intentionally buried. Why? We're going long. In part 2 we're going to explore is Tartarus in the ocean, the seat of the gods in the sea. Things like Atlantis, Nephilim creature flood survivors, the marine kingdom, and more. See you soon. Lots of stuff we don't know that's been intentionally suppressed or we just don't know. Also, I found it interesting Cygnus being the dove. When I looked into the names of the stars, that first star where he'd be holding the olive branch, the original name for that star actually does tie in to an herb that's linked to the olive. Without further ado, let's deep dive into the marine kingdom. Fascinating possibilities in the ocean. The mysterious kingdom of the deep, the marine kingdom, is Tartarus in the ocean, the seat of the gods, Nephilim survivors, literal, physical, accessible gates to the underworld if they weren't heavily guarded. In the Bible, Peter and Jude define what Tartarus is. It's a mysterious place. Let's check it out. Most translations say hell, but the common theme is darkness, being bound with chains, gloominess, a dungeon, and awaiting judgment. This is the place that God made for all the fallen angels. These are literal places in the underworld beneath our feet. Job and Enoch also mention Tartarus, as do Greek mythology and other things you're going to find out. Possibly a group of 200 fallen angels are there too, amongst other beings. And totally separate compartments of the underworld. There's also fallen angels buried under the Euphrates River. In Transformers, you see in the plot how Megatron was buried in the ocean and they needed to go retrieve him, who was in chains, and then resurrect him basically, also tying into the Nimrod plot, if you've been following along. Also in Greek mythology, Tartarus is an underworld prison for the Titans. It's the lowest place of hell. It's also referenced to as the abyss, or in Greek abusos, in Hebrew tahom, or in English translated as the deep or the abyss, or the bottomless pit. These are all places that I'm theorizing are in the ocean somewhere, definitely in the earth. Lots of access points. Hesiod, Homer, and others mentioned it. They also associated the god Oceanus with Tartarus. Future Tartaria plug, by the way, which I suspect is just a name and has nothing to do with what that actually is. Tartaria seems to be a reference to Tartarus, the lowest place of hell. Also, in Roman mythology, Tartarus is fiery rivers guarded by a hydra, which is a dragon. Sounds like the lake of fire. Could this be the Leviathan guarding entrances to the underworld? Like the portals or lakes at the bottom of the ocean, like the ones that the Challenger bounce off of. The weird brine pools. Also, this idea of the Leviathan or other creatures being a guard, like the hydra in the Roman mythology. Sounds a lot like in Genesis how there was an angel with a flaming sword to be a guard for the gates of Eden, to banish man from it. Also, God made Leviathan. In the book of Job, you see how God brags about making Leviathan as the chief of his creation. So is there possibly a counterfeit Leviathan? Or is Leviathan appointed to just be a guard for the underworlds? Either way, there's a spirit known as the Leviathan spirit, which we're going to be coming back to. Also, the possibility of deep Nephilim creatures that survived the flood, seeing how that whole world and how it's another realm weren't affected by what happened with the flood. This also ties in with recent thought experiments I did about octopus, whales, dolphins, etc. And in Mars Attacks, the alien brain was the dolphin brain. Maybe it has a reason to do with why it's illegal to communicate with them. Lots of other unknown, hidden, or legendary creatures like Leviathan, such as the Kraken, or inner Earth seas, portals and whirlpools, and the ridiculously treacherous North Sea, which we'll be coming back to. Just look up some footage of it on here, it's ridiculous. Also marine kingdom oddities such as mermaids and mermen, sirens who sing beautiful songs to lure in fishermen to their death, and even the disciples at the time of Jesus knew of the legends of ghosts walking on the sea, which they thought Jesus was. By the way, Satan can cause storms, which is clear by that story. In Ezekiel 28, you see this verse right here about the mysterious seat of the gods, tying in with Atlantis and legends of Poseidon, the Pope fish hat, USOs, and lots of beings emerging from the sea themes. Let's check them out. Also, Poseidon has the trident, and so does Shiva, also has the trident, which is basically a big tuning fork for frequency, like I mentioned. Which is really interesting because the devil has the pitchfork, which is also like another tuning fork, frequency, and how he was in charge of music. Also, China has something called Trident, which is a neutrino detector underneath the sea, along with many other mystery naval underwater bases that certain countries have in certain places. Maybe one even near the Bermuda Triangle, which we'll be coming back to. Awanas is the Sumerian legend, who taught stuff and he was from the sea. The Hindu and Japan accounts are similar. And many cultures have godlike beings that come from the sea to start civilization. Speaking of USOs, there was this really interesting glowing Ferris wheel phenomenon in the 1800s that for a span of 200 years, that's what sailors said they saw. Think of places like the Bermuda Triangle or even the Devil's Triangle and how they have weird magnetic anomalies. Some of these magnetic anomalies are due to gates or portals or entrances to the underworld. It's not a coincidence that the deepest place in the Atlantic Ocean is right near the Bermuda Triangle, the trench there. And also the deepest trench in the whole sea, the Mariana Trench, is also right next to the Devil's Triangle. Not a coincidence. They lead down into the underworld. And they also have to do with the reasons of the magnetic field anomalies. So do possibly the trident pitchfork tuning forks. All of these mysteries in the ocean, it's a whole nother realm. Portals to other places, spirit prisons, spirit kingdoms, marine kingdoms, other beings altogether. Breakaway civs, the seat of the gods, and more. Could it tie into things like maritime admiralty law and why the law of the land is different than the law of the sea? And why there's different sea boundaries. And certain seas don't even seem to mix, like they're just the borders of different kingdoms, kinda. Plus weird things like dragons or giant creatures coming out of the ocean recently, and things that need NDAs that sound like rituals that are happening. Something definitely weird is going on in the oceans. One thing's for sure, if the ocean attacks, it's definitely going to send tsunamis, which is exactly what Revelation and Jesus say is going to happen at the end of time. The roaring of the seas, tsunamis everywhere. At least a third of the water is being destroyed. Also in Revelation, a beast coming out of the sea, which is definitely metaphorical, but is it also literal? Does it tie in with the Leviathan and what the book of Isaiah says about how God will punish the twisting serpent, the dragon of the sea? So one final quandary, is the marine kingdom a kingdom or a prison? Well, it's both, just like the realm of the land. It all happens on here. The seas and the underworld and everything under our feet are totally different realms. Variety of variables that are pretty deep, no pun intended. Final smorgasbord of data on the marine kingdom. The story I told you earlier about Jesus walking on the water and him wanting you to maybe ties in. A lot of people bring up the pig story, but when Jesus tricked the demons into the pigs, he was really wiping out Zeus's or Apollo's offering, who he had a temple at the time, and the pigs were the offering. Cool little side note that you maybe didn't know. Also, at the end of time, the dragon spews a flood out of his mouth in the book of Revelation, but the earth helps mankind. So where is this mysterious seat of the gods? Because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am a god, and I sit in the seat of God, or I sit in the seat of gods in the midst of the seas. What this says here is I sit in the seat of Elohim, in the center of the seas. Interesting note about the sea. In the concordance, it makes a note that it could be the Mediterranean Sea, which is a very strong possibility. To sit in the seat of the Elohim means to judge in the seat of the Elohim, in the center, heart, or middle of the seas. Could it be the middle of Hyperborea? Is that the reason why on Google Earth there's a big blur right there at the North Pole? Could this tie in with all the North Pole legends? Is the seat of the Elohim right there in the North Pole? Does it dimensionally ascend upwards and downwards above the crystal sea in some kind of dimensional way to even in the sea as well, to where he can see everything? How much of this realm is water and how much is land? Where are we living really? Thank God we have safe passage on this land ship right now. Also, one final note, what did it mean in Genesis when God said he will not strive with man forever? Well, that word strive basically means rule over. As you see, God's intentions from the beginning is not to rule over us, but to rule with us. That's what this is kind of all about, which ties back into the beginning of this experiment with Gobekli Tepe, and the first word being God, and the first carvings being a warning to examine our life in the future that is to come. See you next time on The Savage Truth. The word tells us that his voice is like the rushing of many waters. It also calls him the living water. Think about how much the human body is made out of water and how much we need it to survive. Water can help you energetically cleanse from all the foul energy in the atmosphere. This living water of Jesus, the rushing of many waters, his voice, imagine singing over you like Zephaniah 3, where it says the Lord will sing over you. With the frequency of the rushing of many waters, absorb the shalom and realize he's the only way we're going to be able to get rid of some of the stuff we've been holding on to that's been plaguing us day after day. You still have the belief, but some of the same stuff keeps you down and hinders you from your journey in the Lord. So go ahead and let all that go. The door of the ark, what a symbol in and of itself. The open door, the invitation. The door itself shut by the hand of God. And once the door was shut, the mercy was over. But the mercy was great. Noah called out and preached for like 100 years, and literally nobody responded. He had the worst response of anybody. For judging by man's success, he had none. But he was actually successful by the standard and definition of God for doing what he was supposed to do, even though nobody responded to him, and his numbers were basically zero. But once the rain started and God shut the door, well, by God's mercy is always made new, and that's what we see with the symbol of the rainbow. Another fascinating deep dive in and of itself. As long as you're still here, the door of your heart is still open. Let Jesus on your boat, and the waters be still. Be blessed. See you next time on Savage Truth.
It's Crossfinger, baby.
Hey yo, spirit leading, I'll go. I ain't telling you no float. I ain't trying to show boat, bro. Just wanna hop on your boat. So this H2O underneath my feet. Seasons a weep, no need to speak. No pleasure, couldn't even sleep. But deep Carter, deep my G. Through unknowns, you leading me. When it's hard to walk on agua, do it proper. Clear my chakras, taste your guava. Call me father, bring me back to where I started. For I departed hardened. Separated for a season and parted. Now I'm back on the finally ready.